the very existence of Netflix interrupts how we receive Once Upon a Time in America. There's so many different versions of this movie, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. But the intent is long form. We're inundated with Netflix breaking movies up into a 7-hour-long series, 8-hour-long series. When we watch this movie now, it's hard to register it as a movie and not as a miniseries because it has so many different chapters. But this is an American movie, and this is one of the great American movies. It's one of the great epics. It stars Robert De Niro, James Woods. We gotta get into it. Let's go.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take 1.
Action!
While I was watching this movie, and this is always a good sign for me when I get into something new, that's not current. I'm watching Once Upon a Time in America. I immediately stopped the movie after the beginning. This movie has one of the most brutal beginnings, the brutal starts one could ever imagine. And as soon as we hit the flashback, so this movie goes forwards and backwards. I stopped the movie and I just researched it, like everything that happened in 1984. I want to know why this movie didn't win the Palme d'Or. I want to know why this movie didn't win the Academy Award. That's it. I know 1984 is The Color Purple, but what else was this movie up against? And when I go down that rabbit hole, I know I'm watching something impactful. Once Upon a Time in America is relentless. It's even relentless in how it portrays early American life. And it's not early. Like, America's been around for quite some time. Yeah, so watching this movie, Once Upon a Time in America, 1984, directed by Sergio Leone. Robert De Niro is all over the poster, all over the promotions. Also, yeah, James Woods, Jennifer Connelly, Joe Pesci. So many names we recognize. This movie has such a brutal opening by AKAPADers. It is brutal. The blood is glistening red. With all of that, after the opening, had to stop the movie and hit the laptop. Because I got to look into what happened with the Palme d'Or this year and what happened with the Academy Awards. The Killing Fields, The Dresser, Paris, Texas, A Private Function. These are the films nominated over this. Killing Fields won. My father used to watch Killing Fields a lot. That's another James Woods movie, by the way. Wim Wenders won for Paris, Texas. At the time, one of the few times the Academy split Best Director and Best Picture. We don't have to door. I'm telling you this because this is a good litmus test for me sometimes. When I explore movies not of the modern age, we'll call it 1984. It's in the past. If I get upset when I know a movie didn't get accolades as I'm watching it, we have something special. And that's what we have here. There's a lot of different versions of this movie. I remember VHS stores, Suncoast Video, having a double VHS for this movie. Double VHS slipcase. And this was always one of those movies. Like, it always was on the shelf. I may have rented it once or twice. For some reason, the opening never grabbed me, which I don't know why, because it's amazing. I may have never have tried to watch this movie. May have rented it, very similar to Dangerously Liaison, where I finally caught that on a American Airlines flight to Paris, coincidentally, which is a little bit funny. Sergio Leone, we know him from Fistful of Dollars, Once Upon a Time in the West, Fistful of Dynamite, Once Upon a Time in America. He's one of the best, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, filmmaker of all time. What he does with this movie after a long hiatus, the time between these two, Fistful of Dynamite, or sometimes Fistful of Duck You Sucker. That's the original name of Fistful of Dynamite. Duck You Sucker. That was 1971. This movie's 1984. That's a lot of years. It's almost 2 decades between movies. The Last Days of Pompeii. I do remember this movie, 1959. The Colossus of Rhodes. I'm not familiar with this movie. So we know him. We know Robert De Niro's filmography. Now we're prepped on the Academy Awards. So what is this movie exactly? When I in the intro, when I say the Netflix mindset destroys this movie, it's hard to watch this movie and not imagine it as some longer miniseries on Netflix, 13 hours, 8 hours. There's a 4-hour and 30-minute version of this movie. It was restored, very similar to, we did Heaven's Gate already. Once from the Heart is a 4K render of that movie. I don't think I mentioned that in that episode, but that's somewhat of a representation. Once Upon a Time in America got tracked down, got restored. Martin Scorsese's foundation did it. And I like when they do things like this for movies, when they preserve some of the original vision, because we know movies like this sometimes, like with Heaven's Gate, when the studio gets it, they freak out and they go into business mode, they go into product mode, and they do the very best. Sometimes the studio is right. I even believe in Heaven's Gate, the studio is right. I believe in this movie, the studio is right. I believe with Apocalypse Now, the studio is right. There's a reason why these movies take so long to catch on. We never got a renaissance of Once Upon a Time in America. Only the cinephiles focused on this movie. I believe audiences are geared for long-form entertainment because of Netflix. And watching this, I feel like everyone should watch this movie. This is the rebirth of the American crime saga. It's what we see later in The Sopranos. It's something to be emulated. Martin Scorsese emulates this movie in Goodfellas. He tries to do what this movie does, because this movie goes through a crime arc, a crime individual, a criminaler from the early ages. We see how hard and rough life was in New York City at this time. And it's a rise. It's a rise, and it's the hubris of the fall. This movie doesn't promote itself from anything other than your friends or your family, and you have to get up. You have to get up in this world. With that, I mean, it doesn't have the glitz of Al Pacino and Oliver Stone's and Brian De Palma's Scarface. But it's a better story than Scarface. It's a better saga than Scarface. I believe this is one of the great American sagas. If we want to see what life was like at a certain time in the world, we can watch this movie. This movie is a historical epic. So much of an epic, I am upset. No nomination. This is insane. I feel like I have to go back and watch everything from the 38th Academy Awards. I really do. I'm like, The Dresser. Well, Peter Yates is the great director. A Private Function. I'm not even familiar with this grouping. This is insane. But yeah, AKA Padders. I can do nothing but recommend this movie. I can do nothing to potentially drive you to this movie. I think you're geared, knowing we live in the age of binge watching and streaming. You are geared to enjoy and watch this film. You can do it. We all can do it. And there's somewhat of this like adolescent wonder that Robert De Niro in his elder years still has. It's like, that's what I mean that this movie does. It's when they're younger, it's so well portrayed, it's so well laid out, it's so well acted, and we always hear, like, don't get kids on set, don't get animals on set. You can't make a movie; they'll never be convincing. One of the kids gets shot, your heart breaks. When they lose their friend, it's there. This movie deserves a lot more study. Sergio Leone's entire filmography deserves study and attention on this very podcast, which we haven't done until now. And one of the reasons why I sat down to watch this, it's simple. This has been in my feed. It's been on my radar. It's been in my brain for too long. I had to watch this movie. And I was so grateful while I was getting into it. So maybe we'll do a future episode on maybe isolating some scenes and cherry picking some stuff. But this is one of those movies, very much like Heaven's Gate, that deserves a lot of study, deserves a lot of attention. And the critics of the day and the tastemakers of the day they were flat out wrong about what this quality is. I just love this movie, and I love the arc. It's masterful.
Okay, that's a wrap.